so Boris Johnson has announced that he will stand down as an MP at the next election. But we can't talk about the former Prime Minister without looking back at his greatest hits. Frankly, if we listed all of his scandals, we would be here until the general election of 2034. Number 1. Boris Johnson's racism and homophobia. Back in 2000, Boris Johnson attacked the Labour government in The Spectator for pushing an agenda that encouraged the teaching of homosexuality in schools and all the rest of it. A year later, Johnson claimed in his book Friends, Voters, Countrymen that gay marriage was comparable to bestiality. Elsewhere in the book he said, "If gay marriage was okay and I was uncertain on the issue, then I saw no reason in principle why a union should not be consecrated between 3 men, as well as 2 men, or indeed 3 men and a dog." In 2002, Boris Johnson described black Africans as pickaninnies with watermelon smiles in a column written in The Telegraph as a response to Tony Blair's visit to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Whilst he claimed his words were satire, no one was laughing. In the same year, this time for The Spectator again, he wrote that colonization in Africa is not a blot upon our conscience. Incredibly, he also claims that the problem is not that we were once in charge, but that we are not in charge anymore. You would have thought that years later, Johnson would have learned not to write disgustingly racist things in national newspapers, but he didn't. In 2018, Johnson compared Muslim women who wore the burqa to letterboxes in an article published by The Telegraph. This prompted him to double down by claiming it is ridiculous that these views are being attacked. We must not fall into the trap of shutting down the debate on difficult issues. His comments sparked a 375% increase in Islamophobic incidents just a week after his column. 42% of online abuse directly referenced Boris Johnson and/or the language used in his column. But wait, there's more. In a fictional book written in 2004, Boris Johnson used old anti-Semitic tropes such as Jewish oligarchs. In particular, he wrote a passage that said there was some kind of fiddling of the figures by the oligarchs who ran the TV stations who were of Jewish origin. Number 2. Spaffing money up a wall. Aside from his long history of racist and bigoted tirades, Johnson also targeted people who wanted to investigate historic cases of child abuse. Back in 2019, during the Tory party leadership election, he argued that the police were wasting money on these cases. You know, £60 million I saw was being spaffed up a wall on some investigation into historic child abuse and all this kind of thing. What on earth is that going to do to protect the public now? This showed a total disregard for survivors of sexual abuse, for whom it's clearly incredibly important that historic cases are solved. Number 3. Endangering a British mum. In 2017, Johnson made a misleading statement regarding a British Iranian woman who was serving a 5-year jail sentence in Iran. Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe was visiting her parents in Iran when she was arrested for allegedly trying to topple the government. For years, Britain pleaded with Iran for her release. Despite Nazanin and her family claiming she was on holiday, Johnson made a statement that condemned Iran for detaining her on the basis that she was simply teaching journalism. This statement was deeply irresponsible, as it tried to force Iran to release Nazanin by giving credit to the allegation that she was potentially a spy. Not only is Johnson racist and homophobic, but he's also incredibly stupid. Number 4. COVID. Johnson's former aide Dominic Cummings didn't hold back when attacking him for his COVID response. Cummings claimed that Johnson was to blame for the government's approach to tackling the virus. Not only did Boris Johnson's government completely fail in tackling the pandemic, but Cummings also claimed that he heard Johnson say that he preferred to let the bodies pile high than pursue a 3rd lockdown. Number 5. Conflict of interest. Boris Johnson apologised for failing to declare £52,000 of income on time. In the same year, he failed to declare his 20% share of a property in Somerset on time. And finally, the beginning of the end for Boris Johnson. Number 6. The Chris Pincher scandal. In November 2017, former Tory MP Chris Pincher resigned from the Whip's office after being accused of making unwanted passes at a Tory activist. In spite of this, Boris Johnson still promoted him to Foreign Office Minister some 2 years later. He was promoted once again in 2022 to Deputy Chief Whip. Just a few months after that, Pincher was accused of drunkenly groping 2 men at a Conservative Friends of Cyprus event. On the 3rd of July 2022, 4 more allegations came to light. The next day, Number 10 admitted that Boris Johnson knew about the allegations against Pincher, but promoted him anyway. So, we can celebrate the departure of this posh, lying and deeply immoral Eton alum, but there's no guarantee that somebody worse won't come after him. It's our flawed democratic institutions which show very little accountability to anybody that allowed this man to climb up the ranks and become our Prime Minister. We must be mindful that despite Johnson leaving frontline politics, the same structural problems that could easily pave the way for another racist serial liar still remain firmly in place. Let's take the victories where we can, but let's not pretend Johnson's downfall signals any real change in British politics.